All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick, you're doing a preview and prediction for Week 1 contest between Utah and UCLA going down late to cap off Saturday of Week 1 in Pasadena, 11 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox. 50.5 is the total. 6-point favorites are the Utes. Getting started with the Utah offense against the Bruins defense. Utah, they go to the portal to significantly try and upgrade a few weaknesses for this team. And that starts with quarterback. This is an area that's really just been a problem the past couple of seasons. That came full circle when Cam Rising just had too many injuries to really be able to put up quality efforts. He now retires from football after a successful campaign with the Utes. They go and get Devon Dampier. Of course, his offensive coordinator, Jason Beck, comes over from New Mexico with him, and these guys are looking to implement a run-heavy offense, I think is going to be the MO. Devon Dampier really shines as a dual-threat playmaker, but more so with his legs, with his athletic ability and his speed. This guy was tremendous for New Mexico last year, and I think that he certainly is going to fix their quarterback woes because he is going to be productive, and I think he'll certainly improve over time. But right now, in terms of being, a pocket passer, someone that can sit back and pick you apart, that's certainly just not in his wheelhouse. Incredibly young player, though. He will get better. Of course, they added Wayshawn Parker, who was a tremendous breakout true freshman for Washington State last year. This is the 1-2 punch you're going to be focusing on to really uplift your run game. That really wasn't that bad last year. Micah Bernard was nice with over 1,000 yards, but nobody else really did anything of note. And as a team, we only had 130 yards per game and 7 touchdowns, which is one of the worst marks in the entire country. Good news for Utah, Nick, is they have one of the nation's best offensive lines in front of them, led by 2 standout tackles, Caleb Lamu, Spencer Fanu. Right guard Michael McCofsey is a veteran of the program. He's been great. He and the 2 other guys on the interior are also redshirt freshmen, Jaron Kump at center, Tanoa Tagai at left guard. Elite offensive line. You have a run-first quarterback, a guy in Wayshawn Parker who's got a lot of tread still left on the tires, and of course there's an abundance of other transfers they got in the running back room, Nick. I think Utah this year, they're just going to look to pound the rock. They're going to run the football as much as they can. I don't see why not. It seems like a great game plan, and that's going to be the idea here in this one against UCLA.
I think the game plan is run the damn ball here. I think it makes a ton of sense for this Utah offense to do so. 23.6 points per game last year, but they struggled on the ground. 3.88 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns, only 1,500 yards total, 5.2 yards per play, about 4,000 yards of total offense. They were banged up, though, so I give them a bit of a mulligan here, right? They bring in Devon Dampier, who I think is a phenomenal runner. Almost 1,200 yards rushing, 7.5 yards per attempt, 19 touchdowns for him. Just incredible numbers when you really look at it. 2,700 yards on the season last year, passing 12 touchdowns and 12 picks. I think you plug him in, he'll be really solid here. I think he fits the system really well following his offensive coordinator from New Mexico. I think Devon Dampier will be really good and be a really solid asset. Wayshawn Parker was a great ad from Washington State. He was good at Wazoo, 735 yards for him last year, 4 touchdowns. He also had 11 grabs and a touchdown there, so he can be involved in the pass game as well. Expect them to run the ball a lot here, run first. I love this O-line, one of the best units in the nation. Spencer Fano at right tackle is an incredible asset, such a strong, viable right tackle. I like what they have here in terms of running the ball. I expect them to run the ball a lot here against this defense that was good against the run last year for UCLA. That's a key advantage matchup there, right? Can UCLA's defense stand up against the run? If they have a bad day against the run, which would be uncharacteristic for them, that could go a long way for Utah. Keeping an eye on that, certainly.
In this run defense last year for UCLA was elite, and I'm not going to stutter when I say that again because they were elite. 85 yards allowed on the ground against Penn State on the road. They hosted Oregon. Gave up only 153 in that matchup, and that was the season high on the year. They also played the likes of IU and LSU, Minnesota. None of those guys could eclipse 125 rushing yards, so this was a elite rushing defense. They even played Caleb Johnson, Iowa, held them to 80 yards. This group is nasty, and of course they do lose 3 of their top linebackers from last year. That's certainly not going to help in staying that good. But they're still pretty solid when it comes to their defensive line, right? They don't lose guys like Gary Smith, Sial, Tuapaki, Devin Apui, Grant Buckley, that is. These guys were phenomenal last year as starting defensive linemen. Keanu Williams, a senior as well. We also go to the portal to get some more reinforcements led by Jacob Busick. Linebacking group, of course, is going to be a concern because you lose high-end producers and replace them with guys like John Vaughns, Jalen Woods, guys who've been in the program for a couple of years. But when it comes to overall size, I'm not all that happy with what they had. And, of course, we want to recheck this before kickoff to see how much weight was added in the offseason. But when we looked a few months ago, Nick, it was not all that ideal. And that includes a transfer from Oregon State and Isaiah Chisholm, who was a good player for them. So the linebacking group certainly worries me because this is going to be a versatile rushing attack they're facing. With the defensive line, they still remain stout. I think these guys are certainly going to be in for a respectable effort against this great offensive line. It's a hell of a matchup. I can't wait to see.
They were really good against the run last year, 3.34 yards per attempt on the ground last year, given up. They gave up only 17 rushing touchdowns. In total, they gave up 1,100 yards on the ground, 25.3 points per game, 5.41 yards per play. I like the D-line, even if it reloads just slightly a little bit. I think Grant Buckley's a great player. I think Gary Smith's a phenomenal player potentially as well. Keanu Williams was solid. Jacob Busick was good out of the portal, as was Ashton Sanders. I like what we got here. Pretty solid overall. The linebacking core does worry me. Jalen Woods, John Vaughns, and then Ty Lee are all undersized a little bit, in my opinion. Isaiah Chisholm, I think, was an interesting add as well, who could do a whole lot at linebacker for this team. From Oregon State, he had 75 total tackles last year. Expect him to get a starting role potentially. He was a good player coming over from the Beavers there. I like this team overall against the run here. It's a very intriguing matchup, right? Because I don't know if this passing attack for Utah, that is, that has a lot of new look players in the wide receiver room like Tobias Merriweather, Larry Simmons, and Ryan Davis. I don't know exactly how well that passing attack will look week one. They might struggle to throw the ball a little bit here. I think if Utah can run the ball effectively, they will win this game. But if UCLA plays as strong as they did against the run last year, it could be a tough day for the Utes. I love what this defense can do, even if the secondary does also concern me for UCLA because it's a completely revamped unit, and it wasn't a particularly good unit last year either.
Yeah, I think Ryan Davis from New Mexico, 750 yards. Tight end Otto Tia, who had 400 plus yards, are really the only guys I like out of the portal. I don't think the passing attack's really going to be all that effective to begin with. Facing a secondary that's also new look with a bunch of transfers. Ones I like, though, guys like Andre Jordan, Robert Stafford, Key Lawrence. So I don't think this matchup's going to matter as much. Just be sound against the run. Can't wait to see how this one plays out in the trenches, though. On the other side of things, obviously a lot of drama. UCLA, an offense that was pretty bad last year, but they did play better down the stretch despite being incredibly one-dimensional. They go and get Nico Lamaliva, who's a phenomenal player in terms of talent, right? This is a former five-star number one recruit who did struggle at times last year at Tennessee when it comes to his vision and decision-making, but now he's going to go to UCLA, and he's going to have a nice group of weapons to work with. Kawazi Gilmer, Titus Makio Atamalata. I think those are some good pass catchers right there. Rico Flores is still on this roster. Mikey Matthews, probably the top transfer they picked up. They did have about 5 guys they added from the portal. But I think this is enough weapons here to do some damage for Nico. I think it's going to be a pass-heavy offense still. The running back room did add guys like Anthony Woods, Javian Thomas from Cal. So I think they can certainly be better in that realm. The offensive line is still a bit of a work in progress. I do like Julian Armella coming over to fill in a guard spot. Garrett DeGiorio at right tackle is a respectable player. I definitely think this UCLA offense is going to improve this year, Nick. I'm excited to see how Nico does. Still a highly talented player. I think he just wants to go out there and play football and put all this nonsense behind him. But of course, at wide receiver, we still are pretty talented, I think, and it's an overlooked group for the Bruins. And I think they'll do well. They are playing against a tough Utah defense. It's going to do their thing this year, but it's not a group I'm incredibly sold on, especially when it comes to what they did in the portal at corner. It's a lot of guys from the FCS and JUCO ranks. They do return Smith Snowden, Elijah Davis to occupy some corner spots. Teo Johnson's an elite player at safety. So they still have some solid key components to their secondary, but I think it's not one that UCLA can't take advantage of.
18.4 points per game for this unit last year, but they're completely revamping. They were an interesting offense overall last year, 3.07 yards per attempt on the ground. That was abysmal. 4 rushing touchdowns, abysmal. We'll talk about that in a second. 5.36 yards per play, 17 touchdowns. The Nico time, we have it listed on the PowerPoint here. Talk is over. Time to see Nico, right? That's what this is. Put behind you what happened in the offseason. Put behind you all the drama that came with that, and go out there and play damn football like you know you can as a former 5-star recruit. 6'6", 215. He had some struggles last year, right? It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows at Tennessee last year, which is why I think that some of the fans were happy to see him end up moving on and end up in UCLA. 63% comp rate, 2,600 yards, 19 touchdowns, 5 picks, 3 rushing touchdowns last year. There were certainly good, but there were certainly bad games too. Bad games against Ohio State and Alabama were certainly ones that really stick out to me. A bad game against Georgia as well. Didn't really look that great against Oklahoma at times as well. But they had some good games. Had a good game against Kentucky. Had some good games against some of those lower tier opponents. Had a great day against Vanderbilt in what was a big win. What Nico are we going to get in week one? I think they're going to try and throw the ball a ton here. I think it's going to be a pass heavy approach. Mikey Matthews was a great add in the slot. I think he'll get a lot of options early on from Cal. He can really step up and be a good player for this team. He also did previously play for Utah. Important to note that. Gilmer, I think, is a really solid player overall. I think they have some good players. Carter Shaw is not bad. Rico Flores could be good for this team. Jalen St. Paul was not a terrible add out of the portal either. I think they're going to throw the ball a lot. The offensive line is a work in progress, but I think it's not the worst unit in the world going against a pass rush for Utah that has some solid pieces. overall. I don't think that they'll be able to run the ball a ton in this game because I just think we'll talk about that rushing attack in a second that wasn't very good. It's the Nico show. I think they're going to throw the ball a ton, look for a lot of attempts here, look to see this UCLA team trying to attack early and often against a secondary that's a little bit weak on paper.
Solid pass rush for Utah, but certainly one I think it's going to be weaker compared to years past. They're just not as deep or as stacked when in terms of depth or skill. Logan Fano, I think, can be respectable at DN. John Henry Daly stepping up. I'm only convinced that on the interior, Akil Vamehai will be the only breakthrough guy at least week one on this defensive line. So I'm not really sure how the rest of the group will do. I mean, collectively they always do well, and they're also incredibly great at linebacker. So they're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to slowing down the run. Lander Barton, Lavani Dumione, Jonathan Hall. He's tremendous. So the defensive line is certainly a lot weaker. I think the linebacking group is still stout, though, and this will certainly still be a one-dimensional UCLA offense. The run game was just very poor last year, 86.5 yards per game. TJ Harden, I thought he was a respectable running back, but he now transfers out. So I think Utah, they're going to be going up against a one-dimensional offense here. It's going to be on Nico to really uplift this offense overall. Getting to the final thoughts and the prediction for this one. I think UCLA certainly being very undervalued. I know it's not really a great home field advantage, but it still is home field at the end of the day, week one. I think they'll show out a little bit more in Pasadena for this one. Utah, I love what they have for their offense, right? When it comes to what they got in the offseason to help improve the run game, the offensive line's elite. Other than that, though, there's not much I'm really craving about this Utah team. Weak at receiver, cornerback room in terms of depth isn't all that ideal. Obviously, it's still a very well-coached defense, and they're still going to do their thing, but they're not going to be perfect. And outside of linebacker, there's not really a part of that defense that I really love. So I think UCLA is going to shock some people in this one. You went ahead and took them too, Nick. It just seems too obvious to me. And the 6-point spread is just a little absurd, I think, because I think UCLA, underrated passing attack. Their run defense is phenomenal. This is a tough challenge, but one they can handle well. Tougher ones they faced last season. And if they can put that quarterback in Dampier in some obvious passing situations, they're probably going to eat. So I think UCLA, this is a pretty good matchup for them. I think they're going to win this game outright as underdogs.
Yeah, they're going to win this game outright as underdogs as well. I'm all over UCLA here. I like what this team can do. I think the Nico show will be really solid here. I expect a pass-heavy approach. They'll probably attempt to throw the ball a lot in this game, and I don't blame them. They have Nico. Might as well sling the rock here. The offensive line should hold up well. The rushing attack I don't think is great for UCLA, and I don't think it's great, for the potentially the matchup for them is great either. I think the run defense is really good. So I think you're looking at two teams that have contrasting styles on offense. UCLA a more pass-heavy approach, Utah a more run-heavy approach. I think this will benefit UCLA in the end. I do like the rushing attack for Utah. That should be a pretty solid unit. But at the end of the day, I think UCLA wins this game. I think they have enough talent to get the job done at home and knock off this Utah team. I think they're getting a lot of love in the preseason, but it may be a little bit too much. I think 6.5, 6 points is just way too many. I don't think that's very fair at all to UCLA. That I think could really be a team that could shock some people in the Big Ten this year. Late night on the West Coast, so only the real CFB fans from the East Coast will be watching this game, staying up late. But I think it's a great matchup between two teams that are really solid overall on Fox. I like UCLA on this one. I think it makes a ton of sense for them to go out, win this game, get themselves a nice win, and put themselves off to a good start to 2025.
So, yeah, for today's episode, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.